Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to NAAE's webinar. My name is Elena Takaki, and I'm here with Cy and Lori Mann at North American Association for Environmental Education. And we have some great presenters today to talk about some of the work that they've been doing in their outreach and diversity initiatives. And we have a lot to cover today, so we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So the title of our webinar today is Building Effective Partnerships with Diverse Communities, and we'll hear a little bit more from our presenters in just a minute, but we have Tracy Price, who will talk about the work she's doing in Oregon, Olivia Grissett, who will be talking about the work she's doing in Maine, and Ashley Hoffman will be talking about the work she's doing in Kentucky. And we're going to go over just some of the agenda and how to use this particular webinar platform. So we'll introduce our presenters in a little bit more detail. We'll hear from Tracy, and then Olivia, and then Ashley. At the very end, we'll do a Q&A session, and then just a few closing comments at the end. Okay, and I'm going to introduce Cy, who's going to talk about some of the how to use Click Webinar.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Click Webinar. This is only our second or third webinar testing out this platform, so bear with us. This slide is a little bit off today, but you can use your computer speakers and you'll be just fine. If you're on the phone, all your lines are muted, so we'll be taking questions through the chat only. So you should be fine with that. And just so you know, we are recording, and this will be posted on EEPro later for the people who registered but couldn't participate today.
Just start recording. I think it's already started. Okay, so if you have a question or if you want to talk with us, there is a chat box at the bottom of the screen if you have any questions or concerns. You can also click the smiley face in the lower right-hand corner, and you could do things like raise your hand, or you can interact in various different ways there as well. Okay, so I'd like to introduce our presenters today. So first we have Tracy Price, and Tracy has worked on a lot of policy, strategy, and coalition building to advance inclusive environmental education. She spearheaded the No Oregon Child Left Inside Act, and she oversaw the development of the Oregon Environmental Literacy Plan. And she's currently working as a consultant on projects at the intersection of education, environment, and racial justice within the Environmental Education Association of Oregon Center for Diversity and the Environment and the Multicultural Collaborative. She is a nature lover, relationship builder, and advocate for systems change. Olivia Grissett currently serves as the president for the Maine Environmental Education Association, as a board member of the New England Environmental Education Alliance, and on the affiliate steering committee for NAAE. Olivia is a facilitator for Maine Project Learning Tree and was named 2009 National Project Learning Tree Outstanding Educator. Formerly a high school science teacher, Olivia is currently the founder and managing editor of Nature Families, which is an online web resource that offers information and ideas for parents and families to empower them to play, adventure, and learn outside. And you can learn more about that at www.naturefamilies.org. And Olivia is passionate about connecting youth to nature, empowering emerging environmental leaders, and building a more inclusive and environmental movement. And then last but not least, Ashley Hoffman is the Executive Director of the Kentucky Association for Environmental Education, and she's been in that role for the past 6 years. Her academic foundation is in nonprofit administration and wildlife ecology, and she currently serves as the executive director of the Southeastern Environmental Education Alliance and as the chair on the steering committee of the affiliate network of NAAE. So all three ladies are very active in the environment. Amazing work. And so with that, we'll go ahead and start. I'll introduce or let Tracy talk about the work that she's been doing in Oregon. Tracy?
Great, thanks. And thanks for the opportunity to talk about what's going on in Oregon. And you don't have the audio on a laptop or on a computer. There's like an echo or feedback. That's true.
Okay. Done 1 second.
We don't hear feedback on our end.
I think it's just that it's playing through your computer. So
Okay.
I'm hearing a delay as the class is a little crazy. Okay, that's great. Okay, thanks. I don't know if y'all can hear me, but hopefully you can still hear me. So I just want to start off by saying that the nature of the conversation today about building relationships across difference couldn't be more relevant and apparent in light of recent events that have been happening. And if you're like me, it's a lot that's pretty overwhelming, and really important for us to think about this intersection really, and the role of environmental education in really helping to encourage a more socially and environmentally just society. So I say, if there's anything that I talk about, I'm happy to follow up with anybody after today's conversation to share more information about our project specifics, or anything that I say that you have questions about or are curious about. Please let's follow up. The intention of working together is really how we can build community to create some social change, at least from my perspective, and that means it's going to take all of us to do that. So really about building and not excluding. So let's please keep the conversation going. So I wanted to introduce Carrie and Keta, who have really been key partners in the work that I've been working on in Portland. And although they're not here presenting with me today, they were a presentation that we gave through a webinar about EECapacity a few months ago. And those slides are available for anybody if they'd like that. But these are really, my very close partners in this work together. So I want to acknowledge them for that. And I also, I want to talk a little bit about the relationships that I have with both Keta and Carrie. And I'm sorry that this next slide looks a little bit, looks like there's a lot going on, and that's, I had it animated so that I could reveal little pieces, but it's okay that it's all at once, because I think that really speaks to the dynamic relationship partnerships. And so although I'm working on an organizational partnership and in an organizational relationship through the Environmental Education Association of Oregon and with the Center for Diversity and Environment and with the Native American Youth and Family Center, it also comes down to the personal relationships that I've been developing with both Keta and Carrie. So I just wanted to share a little bit of how we sort of have formed the work relationship that we have. So initially, I guess it was about 5 or 6 years ago, Keta, who's pictured on the top of the left-hand slide there, and I, as individuals, served on a board together for Confluence Environmental Center, and that was where she and I really got to know each other. As a result of our working together on the board, Keta invited me to participate in one of the Center for Diversity in the Environment leadership programs, which is called Environment 2040 Leadership Program. In Environment 2042, I'll call it E42, and there's a picture of my cohort that's kind of in the middle of the top right there. The cohort is a very intentional relationship building process where we spent multiple multi-day retreats together, working to understand historical, really the history of racial inequities in the U.S. We explored things from biases to microaggressions, again, with a group of people who were intentionally selected across multiple dimensions of diversity. And so I can't say enough about the importance of that program in really transforming the way that I think, the way that I really see the world, and again, the relationships that I built with a lot of the folks in that cohort are impacting a lot of the work that I'm doing today. So that program was very foundational for relationship building. And it was around that time that I was going through that program that I was also coordinating our state EECapacity Year 2 project. And so it was interesting because we had Akima Price come out for one of those first meetings, and Keta and Akima and I sat down after our first EECapacity meeting, and we were talking about what, we've got 2 more EECapacity meetings. Like, how are we going to get to really deep relationship building with the folks who were engaging in this project? And we saw the E42 program as really a model for getting to that deep relationship building across difference. And so we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could actually offer a program like that through Center for Diversity in the Environment in partnership with the Environmental Education Association, that really focused on environmental education professionals. So essentially that is what we did, and that's how we started to work with Carrie. So again, through the Environmental Education Association and through Center for Diversity in the Environment, we were able to leverage $100,000 from our Metro Regional Government. And the Metro Regional Government grant essentially funded 2 of these E42 programs geared toward environmental educators. So at that same time, I was also working with Center for Diversity in the Environment as an associate facilitator. So I actually ended up partnering with Keta, co-facilitating 2 of these E42 leadership programs for environmental education professionals in Portland Metro. So essentially over the last 2 years, we ran 40 people through this same leadership program. So they had multiple multi-day retreats together. They were really developing deep relationships with other folks in the environmental justice community, who worked in just across a set of community-based organizations, in addition to groups who were leading environmental education initiatives. So this is really a circuitous way of saying that, like, Carrie, who you see pictured on the bottom left there, was part of one of those programs, and you can see the picture. You can't really see her in it, but she was one of those cohort participants. And so we had 40 people go through these leadership programs, and from most of those 40 folks, we actually recruited people to participate in the regional project that I'm working on now that I'll talk about in a little bit. The other things that you see on the slide are food and drink. A lot of the ways that Carrie and Keta and I have been working together isn't always down to business, right? We try and meet up for meals. We try and grab breakfast together or lunch together. Food is a big part of what we do. Keta and I have also been working to designate Fridays as fishing Fridays, where we go fishing. Carrie, I just learned, plays disc golf, so it's another opportunity for us to connect on a personal level. So really the purpose of this is just to illustrate that relationship building is an incredibly dynamic process that takes time. For any relationships that you all have in your personal, I imagine that that's something that resonates with you. And so this work is no different from that. So it's on both an organizational level and a personal level that these relationships have really been built. And I'll move on from there, and I hope it wasn't too confusing. So one of the things when Carrie and Keta and I really started working together is that we were trying to think that in our regional project to build an inclusive model for environmental education in Portland, what was it that we were trying to change? And so really understanding why you're embarking on relationship building or why you're trying to build relationships across difference is such a critical foundation for the work that you're going to ultimately do together across difference. And so this theory of change model that's on this slide is what the Center for Diversity in the Environment uses to talk about social change. And so in order for sustained change to really happen, it has to occur across multiple levels. It has to occur at the individual level, the interpersonal level, organizational level, and movement level. So if you think about this within the context of the environmental movement and trying to build a movement that's more inclusive of a variety and diverse perspectives and people and all of that, the movement level change is a really big system for us to address. So when you trace that back to things that you can be doing on an individual level, like how are you building your own awareness, your own understanding, how are you doing your work to educate yourself around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and identifying why this work matters to you. It's easy to get caught up in the what, but if you don't stop to ask why you're doing this work, sometimes you can get really lost in the what. The interpersonal relationships, again, the time that Keta and Carrie and I really spend together getting to know each other and having that be a critical part of our work. On an organizational level, thinking about the Environmental Education Association of Oregon and how is the organization working to advance change and embrace any diversity, equity, and inclusion as a critical part of what they do. So it's really a learning process too at the organizational level. But again, getting clear on what you're trying to change and why is really important and was the foundation for how we started working together. And so in those first conversations, again, that Carrie and Keta and I had, these were some of the things that we discovered that were important to all of us. And what we really identified was this divide that we believe exists between mainstream environmental education, between the mainstream environmental education community and between communities of color and low-income communities. And so you can see some point came up with about the mainstream environmental education community on the right, in terms that they have a desire to be more diverse, inclusive, and equitable. They tend to, it's part of a movement that's really led by dominant culture ways of knowing, doing, and being. And there's really this sense of scarcity and competition. Certainly in Portland, we've got over 400 environmental education providers and very limited resources for them all to do their work. So and those are self-identified environmental education providers too. So lots of competition happening there. So on the other side of this divide, we have communities of color and low-income communities that we know care about the environment are impacted most by degradation of the environment. And that diverse voices, perspectives, and leaders have largely been excluded from this movement over time. And that they have essential wisdom, knowledge, and expertise to share. And so this was helping us frame why we were going to be working together and what it was that we were going to be working to address. And so our process was modeled after a transportation justice alliance work that's happening in Portland that Carrie's been part of. And really having Carrie and I as the co-leads of this project was very intentional. Carrie has a lot of relationships already with some of the groups that we recruited to be part of our leadership group or leadership organization. So we have 11 organizations that are working with us on this project that primarily work with and serve communities of color and low-income community. And this includes groups like the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon and OPAL, which is an environmental justice group, and lots of different community-based organizations that, again, are primarily working with communities of color and low-income communities. The leadership organizations are also being paid for their time to participate in this project. And this was a way for us to really elevate, again, the voices and leaders from communities that have not been as much a part of our mainstream environmental education work so far. The allied organizations were these are also another 11 groups that are organizations that represent more of the mainstream environmental community, not primarily serve communities of color and communities. So this is, our Oregon Zoo, our regional government, some like state park partners, Fish and Wildlife. So some of the folks, again, very much reflective of what EECapacity is all about. This is how we started our EECapacity, was trying to bring these groups together. So this is really an extension of that work. So far, I'll give you a quick overview. We've met about 5 times so far with all of these groups. We had 2 meetings with our leadership organizations to get us started, and we had 1 meeting with our ally group organization, and then we've had 2 meetings with both groups. And the nature of the conversations have been really interesting. And again, this is all in the pursuit of creating or co-creating a shared vision for inclusive environmental education in Portland. And what I can say is that the themes that have really emerged as important in our work together include relationship building, which also happens to be what we're talking about today, and a shared analysis. And this shared analysis is something that we don't yet know what is going to be included in this shared analysis. It could be a localized context of racial equity in Portland Metro. It could be something that helps environmental education providers really do a little bit of an analysis on the kind of programming that they're offering to see, is it really like culturally relevant programming? So we're not sure yet what that shared analysis is going to look like, but by the time we have NAAAE, the conference in October, I'll have a report with some recommendations and have more information about what this looks like a little bit fleshed out for everybody. But we're really excited that the relationship building and the shared analysis piece are two things that have emerged as part of this shared vision for us to inclusive environmental ed in Portland Metro. And we're currently seeking funding because our grant runs out in August of this year. We have a little bit more funding through our EECapacity grant to carry us a little further, but we're trying to secure funds so that we can continue working together for another 2 years, you know, to again develop the shared vision with a set of recommendations and then implement that over the next couple of years in Portland. And in addition to that, we're seeking funds to offer more of those leadership programs that I mentioned on a statewide level and identify another region in Oregon where we can essentially replicate this Portland test to build inclusive and environmental education in another region in Oregon, wherever they seem most excited about taking on this kind of effort. So I want to mention, I won't mention any more specifics about the project per se, but there's a lot more I could say about it. If you want more information, I'm happy to share that with you. But what I'd like to highlight next are some of the themes that have been coming up in these conversations when we've brought these groups together that's really worth reflecting on. One of the themes is around inclusion and equity. And this again gets back to the what you're doing and why you're doing the work and really being clear about what it is that you're wanting to change. Diversity, equity, inclusion all mean really different things. So being really clear on which of those you're trying to focus on is really important. So what's come up for us again, and like I mentioned, the structure that we're using, have leadership organizations that are really elevated in a position that's above our allied organization. And so we don't want to essentially recreate a power dynamic, you know, with different people that are in charge and essentially just have a hierarchical structure that ultimately is not inclusive. So it's like we're trying to balance, like, how do we make all of the folks who we're engaging feel like they're really contributors and that they're part of this co-creation process, and also acknowledge that there are societal inequities that we have to try and balance out and account for in our process. So I hope that makes sense, but that's certainly one of the conversations that we've been having about is how do we not recreate certain power structures, but ultimately create something new that's going to help us all work better together across different. Another, I'll call this attention that's come up is really trying to balance focusing on our process and really having time for networking and relationship building and taking the time to actually focus on that versus having like a very tangible outcome and product to share at the end of our work together. And we know that we live in a society that values product over process. But we know that the way that we're going to get to better products, right, is by having an open process where we actually do focus on relationship building, which is a little bit mushier, right, than having a product. So we're trying to figure out, like, how do we balance both of these so that we're not just continuing to work in a very ambiguous space where we don't get anything done, but that we see the relationships as a value, essentially as a product, right? That's part of this process. One of the other big things in our work together too is that the groups that I mentioned, right? We have leadership groups and we have allied groups. A lot of our leadership groups are environmental justice organizations. Environmental justice comes from the civil rights movement. I mean, it comes from a place that's very different than where the environmental movement and environmental education comes from. And so, when you're trying to bridge essentially environmental education and environmental justice, the recognition that the roots of both of those are really important to address and to acknowledge. And we really, really strongly believe that there's a need not only to bridge these, but to think about, and this is actually something I've been recently processing through, is a lot of our environmental justice groups are directly addressing things like capitalism and colonialism and imperialism in their work, which are not often the things that we hear environmental groups talking about. If, however, you think about where a lot of environmental degradation comes from, it is largely the result of those three things. And so we're trying to figure out, again, how do we create this space between and bridge what's been happening in environmental education and the environmental movement with a very with environmental justice and something that's really rooted in civil rights. So that's something that we're trying to work through and reconcile. And I'll let you know how that goes. But it's a big one. It's definitely, and I think this is where there's opportunity for environmental education to really play a role in helping to create more thriving communities. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. So just a couple key points that I was thinking about in terms of relationship building across difference, and some of these I've already addressed in some of what I've said, but know why you're doing the work that you're doing. If you are engaging in work around diversity, equity, inclusion, be really clear about what part of that you're working in and why. The why is going to be what carries you through the relationships, what carries you through the work that you're doing. So really be clear on why you're doing it. Know on a personal level why it's important to you too. Second is be open to change. This is something we're really interested in changing the way that we practice environmental education here in order to be more inclusive, which is about being able to adjust to what we're hearing from other community. And it's not just about delivering our agenda or the things that we think are important, but really being open to hearing what people are saying needs to shift and being responsive to that. That requires active listening. And one of the main reasons why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, I believe, is because I've been listening to what people are saying. And this isn't something that I'm just making up, right? It's like how to really weave in what people are saying is important. So listen to what people are saying and do something with what you hear. Investing time in each other, like I was saying with the relationships with Carrie and Keta and with our leadership group and with our allied group, it takes time. If you really want to do relationship building, know that it's going to take time and that it's going to be an investment of your time. On a personal level, doing your own diversity, equity, and inclusion work is something that's incredibly important. It helps to frame and build your own awareness and understanding about some of the barriers and reasons why we're not seeing more diversity in the environmental movement. So again, just do your own work around that. There are a lot of different networks that are available to support both white people and people of color. For white folks, if you're looking to get more involved in this, you can look for something like Showing Up for Racial Justice. It's a national organization that has local chapters that's organizing white people around racial justice. For people of color, if you're not familiar with the Environmental Professionals of Color Network, that's something that exists, I think, now in 6 different cities across the U.S., and that's also through the Center for Diversity in the Environment. Embrace a multi-level theory of change, like that image that I showed earlier about the individual level, interpersonal level, organizational level, movement level. Think about what you're doing within that context of these levels, and as best you can work across as many of those as possible. And then practice the same things you do in good relationships, right? I mean, I don't know about you all, but good relationships are not always easy, and it's through that challenge and bringing compassion into those relationships where you can really create some positive change. But it takes time and it takes investment and all the things that you would do in any of the good relationships that you can think about. So that was a lot. I hope that wasn't too all over the place and that some of it made sense. Again, I'm available anytime you want. I look forward to seeing you all in October in Madison and getting to learn more, talk to each other more, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the rest of our presenters have to say. So I will leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Tracy. So with that, I am going to introduce Olivia Grissett from the Maine Environmental Education Association. And unfortunately, her colleague Adrian Asen couldn't join her today, but he was going to present a couple of things. But Olivia will go ahead and talk in his stead. All right, Olivia? Olivia, I think you're still muted, so we can't hear you right now.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, my name's Olivia Grissett, and I am from the Maine Environmental Ed Association, and I'm just very honored to be able to present to you today. I wanted to say that I want to echo a lot of what Tracy was saying in her work, and you'll see some overlap with our work, although I feel very honored to be following Oregon because I think their work is extremely inspirational, and I think in Maine we're a little bit behind kind of the place that they're at, but like she was saying, this is kind of a road forward, and we're all kind of at different places, I think, in our states, and it's really great to be inspired by each other in the work that we are attempting to do. This is really deep and difficult heart work, and so I just really appreciate being involved today. So the project that we've been working on is basically we're trying to create a 2-day gathering with diverse young environmental leaders in Maine and also established leaders who could be potential mentors for these young people from diverse Maine communities. And we have not yet convened our event. It's going to be in September, but we're really, really excited about it. And we're excited for at this event for leaders, both young and old, to be able to share about youth empowerment in the environmental sector, and for us to really focus on identifying some barriers that are really holding us back from increasing the effectiveness of our work, but also building a more inclusive movement in our state. And we really want to have some deep conversations about race, power, and privilege, and what is really keeping emerging leaders in our state from rising into environmental careers and keeping young people working and staying in our state instead of leaving. So the target audience for our gathering, 40 leaders, half young, half more established. We have our application open right now, and we're really excited. It seems strange, but it was kind of hard for us to target our audience, and it's been a long process for us to really figure out what we want to do. But we're really passionate right now in Maine about working harder to kind of get out of our traditional environmental education box and start to generate relationships across sector, diverse sector, and also even within more in general the environmental sector. So in this particular kind of group of work, we're hoping to work with people in environmental ed, also in sustainability, environmental justice, and sustainable food systems and ag ed. And that's, for me, this project is really super exciting to be creating something new across sector, sort of. And we're really giving preference for either those individuals who are working in youth empowerment with underserved audiences, or for youth leaders who are coming from low income or diverse communities that we don't traditionally serve well in our state. And as a result of the gathering, we're really hoping that our state association can house an emerging environmental leadership network that will be a viable network that will support environmental leadership in young people well into the future. And we've been really passionate about trying to start something like this for a few years. In 2014, Juan Martinez from the Children in Nature Network, who is the director of the Natural Leaders Network, which is kind of a similar idea on a national level, he came to work at the New England Environmental Ed Alliance conference. He kind of came and worked with us and was the keynote. And really, we kind of built a friendship there, and inspired me to kind of become spearheading this project in Maine of trying to set up some sort of network for youth leadership in Maine. And we're really excited that MIA could be a perfect kind of statewide group to host this network. So it's been really cool to see in probably just 2 years the shift in strategic priorities in our state EE association to really start supporting environmental education for emerging leaders. And we've done a lot of other work besides this project as well. And I wanted to include a picture here on the right. This young woman, her name is Chloe Maxman, and she was the youngest keynote speaker in our conference history. She was our keynote this year, and she just finished her work at Harvard, and she's a national, just a rising star in the climate justice movement. And she was an incredible keynote speaker. She's from a very small farm in rural Maine, and helped create the Harvard Divest movement. And she's just an incredible young leader in Maine, and we really are so fortunate to have so many individuals that are just going to make a huge impact in the environmental movement in the future in Maine. And I feel like it is definitely our responsibility to create something to connect these young leaders, because we live in an extremely rural state. And if you're passionate about the environment in a high school in Maine, sometimes it's really hard to find other people who are. And there's nothing in our state currently in place that would support young people who are passionate about the environment and really connect them together. And especially those students who really are facing a lot of barriers, either economically or with some of the inequities that we have in our current culture. So we are really excited to do some work to help start making movement forward. Maine was actually really lucky that our gathering and our work this year with EECapacity is a sister project to the New England Environmental Ed Alliance. They did kind of a similar project, but they stayed really within the environmental ed within the environmental ed community. But they were able to pull people that are interested in doing this work in diversity and inclusion and equity from all of the 6 New England states and bring these leaders together, both young and old, at a summit in April. And what was really amazing was our leadership team, and I'm going to be mostly talking about that relationship for this webinar. Our leadership team was able to participate in this leadership summit, and just the process of going to that together and delving into some of the really intense and deep conversations that we were able to have at that summit, and the learning that we had has really forged our relationship much deeper, and has really empowered, I think, the movement and the work that we're doing in Maine. So this project, I have some exciting partnerships. I am partnering with some in-sector partners in Maine, Maine Audubon and the University of Maine Cooperative Extension. They're both the leaders that I'm working with on this project there are both kind of people that we've worked with in some way in the past on youth empowerment initiatives. So we're kind of staying kind of within relationships that have at least started to form there. But the really exciting relationship or partnership that we've never worked before together before this year's project is an organization called Cultivating Community, which is an amazing organization in Portland, Maine that works in food justice and sustainability, ag ed, in the refugee populations. We have some really vibrant and diverse refugee populations in the Portland area. And so I have a picture on the right of Anna Somo, who is their youth empowerment leader, and she's been working with us on this project. And this has been a really great partnership between Cultivating Community and our Environmental Ed Association. Basically, I guess I would say that a good place to start to look at building strong partnerships is looking at projects where you can find some mission overlap. So most of our mission between our EE Association and Cultivating Community doesn't overlap at all. But with this type of work, with youth empowerment and building a more inclusive movement, we were able to find some mission overlap and both be able to bring some unique aspects to the project. So Cultivating Community has a lot of experience working with youth in diverse communities. We have a lot of experience hosting by youth for youth programs, which if any of you have experience with that, it's a very specific type of work to have youth creating leadership gatherings or retreats and hosting and participating, and it's complicated. And also strong partners, they have a lot of really strong partners in the Sustainable Ag Network and Teen Ag Network in Maine, which we've never worked with in the past. And our association we have our statewide reach, we have some funding for this work. We have a lot of experience working with leaders who are spread around the state. And we have some incredible partners in our environmental ed world. So we both had, a lot that we could bring to this project. And in Maine, we've been talking a lot about this work where we're all, instead of inviting people to our table all the time, come work with us in environmental ed, that we're really doing some innovative work where we need to build an entirely new table that does not exist currently. And I put pictures of two of the key leaders who've been working on this project from the very beginning, who are really helping us to design and just build this new table. Stephen Jackson, who's a diversity consultant, has been on our association board for many years and hasn't really been activated by the work. And I think it's because he was experiencing a lot of burnout of continually, in a very gentle but not giving up way, bringing up the issues around diversity that our Environmental Ed Association has not really ever addressed. We need to start doing some of this work. We need to start recognizing this importance of this work. And because we are all, most of our board are not people of color, and I think we're all do-gooders. We want to do well. We think that it's important, but a lot of his comments over the years have been pushed to the side, to be perfectly honest. And with this project, I was able to formally apologize to Stefan and say that, I recognize that you've been pushing for this for many years and that we've really fallen short. And let's start working. Let's start doing something. Let's become the leader, one of the lead faces of building a more inclusive environmental movement in Maine. And so he has become extremely energized around the work in this project and many others. As well as become an incredibly important mentor to me as I try to learn more about diversity and inclusion. And also Bea Truman, this is a picture of her. She is an incredible emerging leader in our state, and she's been an amazing mentor to me. I've been, I think, providing some opportunities for her as a leader to grow, but she's been providing a lot of opportunities for me as a person to grow and to really be open and honest with me, let me ask her questions, whether or not they are ignorant or not, having the openness to kind of help guide me and other people on our leadership team in the project to kind of see things from a different perspective. And Bea is an amazing person. She's part Native American, part African American, and is from a very rural town in Maine. So she has really experienced life in Maine differently than a lot of the people that we traditionally work with and the audiences that we kind of cater to. And so she's been helping us kind of identify some barriers that we really need to be cognizant of in our work. So with the partnership, I guess I would echo Tracy in saying, as we've been doing this work, it's really hard, deep work, and we still have a long way to go. But things that have really helped us build real collaboration is spending time together and becoming friends on a personal level, I think, or at least becoming like respecting each other on a personal level. We were able to travel to the conference in San Diego last year and learn a lot at that conference. And I think that really started to put us on our path of action, towards action, or at least towards providing process. So we've also been working together at on our youth strands. We're able to attend the summit, and we're trying to seek further funding for our project. So that has definitely been difficult, but has also bonded us. So you can kind of see this this kind of graphic I created where we have to build trust, we have to open up, we have to learn together, and it kind of is a recursive cycle. And when you kind of build those relationships, then you can really truly collaborate. So it's been a little bit of a bumpy road in Maine. And in just looking at our time, I kind of need to go quickly, but I just wanted to say that I think innovation is a bumpy road. When you're doing things that are difficult, you're going to have a hard time finding funding. We've been working really hard to try to find more funding to support this work in the future. And it's interesting, we don't really fit into all of the traditional environmental ed funding boxes. The foundations aren't being very receptive to our work, which in some ways has been disheartening, but in other ways it's kind of inspiring that I think we're doing work that hasn't been done before. And if we keep at it and educate our funders, I think that in the end we'll find some support to continue this important work. So we are now in our project entering the next level of building new partnerships, which is really exciting. Now we're able to reach out to groups we've never been able to work with in the past, really. Community organizing groups, some groups like kind of within our sector and some groups without. And we're really excited to really work with them in building this emerging leaders network. To point out some of the ways that we've changed in this project, it's only been about a year for us, but I think really the first time our state EE association is finally leading a project that directly addresses issues surrounding race, power, and privilege in our state in the environmental sector. And I'm really proud of that, even though I feel like we have a long way to go. We're at least really starting that process. We're really trying to do some cross-sector collaboration, and that will help our association grow our reach and our audience beyond our usual suspects, and we're really excited about that. We're being bold, and we're stepping outside of our comfort zone of very traditional environmental ed providers. We're aligning ourselves with environmental justice groups, with climate education and climate justice groups, with community action groups. And we're really demonstrating our commitment to youth empowerment. We've changed our process so that now our gathering is being led by youth leaders. And we're kind of letting go and trying to really put our money where our mouth is and support youth leadership in the state. So I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to present this webinar, and would love, if it has information to share with us, to feel free to contact me in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. It sounds like you're doing some great work in the Northeast area, and especially in Maine. And again, if anyone has any questions for Olivia, please just save them to the end, and you'll have the opportunity to enter those questions or comments in the chat box. But at this point, I would like to introduce Ashley Hoffman from Kentucky, and she's the Executive Director at the Kentucky Association for Environmental Education. Ashley?
All right, hopefully you all can hear me. I'm not sure. Let me know if you can't.
We can hear you. Thanks.
All right, so my name is Ashley Hoffman, and I really wish that the students could be here to talk to you all today, because really they're the ones that are leading this work, and I'm just serving as a conduit to connect them and support them. So they did have the opportunity to do a presentation for the other state consortium leaders recently, and it was really great to have them share the work that they're doing. But I'll do my best to share kind of the overarching goals of the work that we're doing in Kentucky, and I'll try to be quick because I know we're almost out of time. Kentucky started doing EECapacity work several years ago. I guess we've been doing it for the past 3 years now. And one of the things that we've really struggled with is continuity, getting people to stay engaged throughout the entire process. And so this past year, we decided to really refocus our efforts to not have such a broad spectrum and really focus on where we saw the most impact, and that was with students. And so we really wanted to work with student groups to introduce them to environmental education before they enter the workforce, with the hopes that this plan to diversify the field of environmental education would be a long-term process and not something that would necessarily happen overnight. So our co-leader on this, Jennifer Hubbard-Sanchez, she works at Kentucky State University, and we also had a couple additional partners that we pulled in from Murray State University. Gracia White, she was our emerging young leader on this project, and she was a student at Murray State University, and then we also worked with students at Eastern Kentucky University. Basically, our goal was to bring together these student groups to have an opportunity for student leader networking. We modeled this off of the ETAP leadership clinics that were done several years ago through NAAEE. And the idea was that we brought the students together. We asked them to set the agenda for the retreat, tell us what kind of professional development they were looking for. They set the agenda, we supported them, and we had a 3-day student retreat for students from all 3 universities from across the state. And then the students had the opportunity to, they participated in that retreat, that the students from the other universities worked together to collaborate, and then towards the end of the retreat, they worked to develop action plans. So we also provided some funding for them to go back after the retreat and do some action projects at their university to engage other students. So starting this year, we had 5 students from each university, and they're committed to working through fall of 2016. We did have the leadership clinic in February, and they are currently in the midst of their projects, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a minute. And they're also going to be presenting their work at the KAEE conference this September, which is exciting because the students will have the opportunity to participate in a professional conference and really share with others what kind of work they're doing at their universities. Some of the topics that we covered during the retreat it shows were leadership and team building, the basics of environmental education. They were really interested in climate change topics, so we did a certification in Project Learning Tree's climate change module. They were also interested in strategic networking, marketing, and group thinking on campus initiatives for environmental education. So those were the topics that we covered during the retreat. Here's just a few pictures of some of the students during the retreat presenting some of their work. The students have really led this. So again, we play a very peripheral role in this project because we want the students to be the leaders. So they set up a Facebook group page to keep in touch. They post updates on their projects with one another, share ideas, get advice from one another. And we just serve to help out wherever we can and support them as needed. This is some of the feedback that we got from them post-retreat. And I'm not going to read it because we're short on time, but you can read the slides later if you're interested in seeing what their thoughts were. And so each university is a little bit different. Kentucky State University, they have been doing several different projects with local school communities. They've been doing projects on campus. They did a sustainability series on campus. They even met with the university president to convince him to dumpster dive with them for recyclables. They're working on a campus butterfly garden and educational signage. One of the students goes by Farmer Brown Goes Green, and he does hip-hop songs around environmental education with local schools. And then they also hosted a campus EE Field Day. If you're interested in hearing his songs, you can just Google Farmer Brown Goes Green. Eastern Kentucky University, the students are working on setting up a farmers market on campus. There's one in the area, but it does not operate on campus, and they'd like to do an annual event there in partnership with the farmers market, as well as bringing in the school's greenhouses and farms. And then the Murray State students have been working on developing pollinator way stations on the campus and at the local schools. They've been doing educational programming at the local schools and things like that. And the really neat thing about the Murray students is that they have reached out and they've really learned how to tap their networks and develop partnerships. And they've reached out and they've secured additional funding to match what we've given them through other partners such as U.S. Fish and Wildlife and some local family foundations. And the students initiated that, and that was really neat to see them be able to learn how to utilize those partnerships to bring in additional funds as well. So just to wrap things up, because I know we're right at the end of the webinar, but we're going to continue to work with the students to assist them in their project development and to assist them with their presentations. And we hope to continue this work in the future and maybe expand upon this pilot initiative to bring in a broader array of students in the future, because we'd really like to see more students getting engaged in environmental education again before they enter the workforce. So I believe this is a project that we're hoping to expand upon in the future with our university partners. And we're really excited to have our university partners support this work, and they've been instrumental in the process, as each university has a mentor who serves as their local contact for this work, and I think that's a critical component of this project. So that's all I have for today. So.
All right, thank you so much. So as you can see, three very different approaches to being more inclusive in the environmental education work that we did. So at this point, if you have any questions or comments for any of the presenters, you can go ahead and put them in the chat box at the bottom. And I'll give everyone just a few seconds of silence to do that. I know that we are at the time, but if you have another 5 minutes, we'd appreciate it if you could hang with us just for a little bit. So you'll still have the opportunity to enter questions or comments in the bottom, but we'll go ahead and just talk about a couple of things that we wanted to share with you. Sai, do you want to talk about our monthly webinars?
Sure. Since February of this year, NAAE has started hosting monthly EE Pro webinars. Thus far, we've talked about systems thinking, we've talked about storytelling. This month, July 26th, Dr. Nicole Ardwin from Stanford will be talking about cultivating collective impact, so be sure to register for that one. You can find all this info on www.naae.org/EEPro. Okay, and these are some of the upcoming topics. So we'll be discussing early childhood, climate, community resilience, so keep an eye out for that stuff. It'll be on our website.
Great, thank you. If you haven't visited our new website, please do. If you go to at naaee.org, and then EEPro. You can join EEPro, where you'll be able to interact with people in discussions. You'll be able to see articles. You'll be able to see webinars and courses, all related to environmental education. And well, Sai had a big part in creating that website. Do you want to tell them what else they can do? Fabulous things they can do on EEPro?
Sure, we have a blog set up where moderators will be posting all sorts of interesting topics from one of our, I want to say, 16 different EEPro discussion groups. So there's a group for just about anything: climate change education, advocacy, conservation, early childhood, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the guidelines for excellence if you use that in your work. So there's a lot of different topics that you can talk about and discuss with your peers.
Great, thank you. And Lori, would you like to talk about the upcoming conference and also just say a couple of sentences about EECapacity work?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I want to encourage you all to in Madison, Wisconsin this year. It's in October. The type work that these 3 states that have been reporting today are all part of EECapacity work, which is, as you most likely know, is funded by EPA and has been a 5-year project looking at capacity building in the field of EE. We have 10 states that have been working on very specific model programs. They will be presenting about these programs at the conference, along with a lot of other work that is related to diversity and inclusion and building partnerships. But the 3 states that we heard from today, Oregon, Kentucky, and Maine, are just 3 of 10 really outstanding and exciting projects that I've been so proud and excited to work with. And I would encourage you, as I say, to come out to the conference, hear more about them, contact the people that have been speaking today, and if you'd like, there's more information on our website about EECapacity and the work that has been happening across the board.
Great, thank you, Lori. And then if you are at all connected with NAAE on social media, or if you receive our emails, you know that we have a toolkit for community engagement. The draft guidelines are out right now for comments. And we're also looking for key examples of good work that's being done out there. So you can find this draft on EEPro, or you can contact myself, Elena Takaki, or Elena, ELENA, at NAAE.org, and I can send you a draft as well. And Laura Simmons is heading that initiative up. Okay, again, there's my contact information. You can also contact Lori if you have any questions. Okay, I don't see that anyone has had any questions or comments for our presenters today, but perhaps you will later on. Feel free to contact us and let us know, and we can certainly get your comments on to the appropriate person. And thank you all for joining us today. We appreciate your time, and we hope to see you on our webinar, on our next webinar. All right, thank you.